Have you ever been to the Grand Canyon? Is it on your bucket list? One of the best experiences I've ever had was in March 2017 when I took my 70-year-old mother on the Grand Circle road trip, which included not only the Grand Canyon, but 5 other equally amazing national parks: Bryce Canyon National Park, Capitol Reef National Park, Arches National Park, Canyonlands National Park, and Zion National Park. What made this trip amazing was that we didn't just drive through the national parks and take pictures of the views from lookout points. We took our time in each park and explored the scenery up close on some amazing day hikes. It's a pretty special shortcut to get rewarded with incredible scenery after walking for just a little while, like you can in these 6 national parks. The U.S. Parks website is a great introduction to the Grand Circle road trip. I've included this and other resources in the description below the video. All of these parks are very well organized, and the trails are clearly marked, so you can choose if you want to do easy walks or more strenuous hikes. The parks have everything from paved walking trails accessible for wheelchairs and strollers, to hikes that are so steep you need to hold on to a chain that's bolted onto the side of the mountain. You can buy a national annual park pass for $80, which covers your entrance fee to these and other national parks in the U.S. for 1 year. The parks can get extremely hot, so you'll definitely want to look online at seasonal temperatures before planning your trip. For us, March turned out to be the perfect time to go as the snow had melted, but it was still cool enough for comfortable hiking. We camped most of the nights, but if you don't like roughing it, you can stay in lodges or rent Airbnbs just outside the parks. The first park we visited was Bryce Canyon National Park. We stayed for 2 nights at Ruby's Inn, right outside the park. On the first day, we hiked part of the Rim Trail to Queen's Garden Trail and Navajo Loop Trail, which was about 3 miles. On the second day, we hiked the 8-mile Fairyland Trail through the Amphitheater of Hoodoos. Even though there was snow on the ground in some parts, it was hot enough at times that we were putting the snow on our heads to cool off. What I love about day hiking, as opposed to multi-day trips, is that you don't have to carry a heavy backpack with your tent, sleeping bag, food, stove, and so on. And because you don't have a heavy backpack, it's a lot easier on your feet, so you're far less likely to get blisters. The parking lots in the national parks can get really busy, so you'll want to arrive early in the day. Most visitors don't walk very far from the parking lot, so the best way to escape the crowds is to walk the longer trails. After a couple days in Bryce Canyon, we drove about 3 hours on scenic Highway 12 to Capitol Reef National Park. We camped for 2 nights at Fruita Campground, surrounded by orchards and red bluffs. The first day, we hiked the Capitol Gorge Trail, about 2 miles through a deep canyon. In the evening, we did a short hike up to Goosenecks and Sunset Point for a panoramic view of the canyon at sunset. The next day, we hiked the Fremont River Trail in the day, and in the evening, the 3-mile Chimney Rock Loop for panoramas of the Water Pocket Fold Cliffs and the sunset. One of my favorite things to do after spending a day hiking is to enjoy a great meal or some treat I've been craving, maybe an ice cream cone or 2. Next, we drove 2.5 hours to Arches National Park. We camped for 2 nights and made this our base camp to see Arches one day and Canyonlands the next. At Arches, we hiked 3 miles to Delicate Arch, did a loop near the Devil's Garden campground, scrambled around some boulders at Sand Dune Arch, and finished with the Broken Arch and Tapestry Arch loops. My mom was such a little mountain goat, scrambling around the boulders. When I was a kid, she called after me to be careful, but on this trip, I was the one cautioning her. "Mom, be careful! Mom, not so close to the edge!" I was amazed at her stamina. We listened to our own audiobooks, podcasts, or music while we hiked, so we never got on each other's nerves. It was already up to 80 degrees that day in March. Canyonlands National Park is only half an hour away from Arches. This park was the least busy of all the parks we went to. We did 4 lovely hikes: Mesa Arch, Upheaval Dome, Grand Viewpoint Overlook, and Murphy Point, totaling about 8 miles. Because we had given ourselves plenty of time on this trip, we took lots of breaks between the hike to have picnics, read in the shade, or just contemplate the world from a new perspective. Most evenings we drove to some scenic lookout to watch the sunset. On the way to the Grand Canyon, we stopped in the town of Bluff and toured a little fort from the 1800s. We drove a few hours, then camped for one night in Monument Valley. The next day, we drove 2.5 hours to the south rim of the Grand Canyon National Park and camped among the trees at Mather Campground. We followed the trail of switchbacks down into the canyon along the South Kaibab Trail to Cedar Ridge, about 3 miles return. Then we watched the sunset from a spot along the rim. On the second day, we hiked the Bright Angel Trail to 3 Mile Rest House. Climbing in canyons is the opposite of climbing mountains in that the uphill is on the way back, so you have to make sure to not take on more than you can handle. The way back from 3 Mile Rest House was equivalent to climbing about 200 flights of stairs. Zion National Park is about a 3.5-hour drive from the Grand Canyon. We camped just outside the park. On the first evening, we did the Watchman Trail up a little mountain for views of the canyon. On the second day, we hiked Angel's Landing, about 5.5 miles. The last part was along a ridge 1,400 feet above the canyon. This was my favorite hike of the trip. It felt amazing to be up that high. After that, we did the Kayenta Trail, Upper Emerald Pool Trail, and Riverside Walk. On the third day, we hiked the Hidden Canyon Trail and the Weeping Rock Trail. We were really lucky with the weather on this trip and only got rain on the last day. That's another reason why I like to add in some extra time on these trips. If the weather doesn't cooperate, you might be able to wait it out a bit. In every park, we enjoyed checking out the visitor center. They have movies that show the geological history of the parks, so you know what you're looking at when doing the hikes. My mom and I like to go to the back of the theater during the movies and stretch. The staff at the visitor center are happy to recommend hikes for you to do based on the conditions in the park that day, as well as your interests and time frames. All of the parks are unique and beautiful. If you wanted to see just 2 parks, I would pick Zion and Bryce because they are close together, or Arches and Canyonlands, which are also very close together. Different parks have different elevations, which affects their temperature, so you may choose which parks to visit based on the time of year that you are visiting. Thanks for watching.